Welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show, the podcast that brings together industry leaders to discuss the latest trends, insights and strategies. So sit back and relax, let's get inspired by the amazing women who are shaping the future of professional women in Australia. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
So welcome to today's episode of the Business Women Australia podcast show. I'm Lyn Hawkins, I'm the National Director of Business Women Australia, and I'm streaming from the beautiful lands of the Noongar people on the west coast of Australia. I'm forever grateful to the traditional owners, and I have the deepest respect for elders, past, present and emerging. And I hope all Australians, you listeners, take the time to learn more about the wonderful ancient culture of our home and the wonderful people, their wisdom, their care, their love, their compassion, their deep understanding of our lands in which we share. I'm always excited to have our wonderful host, my friend, my mentor, my wise guide, Vida Carlino, on the show with us. We're really going to have a chat today about retreat and look at why so many women in leadership and management in working lives are realising the key to rising higher isn't pushing harder, it's pausing with purpose. So in this episode, we're really challenging the notion that success is born from constant hustle. In fact, the greatest breakthroughs often come from moments of rest, mindful reflection, and meaningful connection. Our theme for today's discussion, to step away, can be the greatest way to step up. So Vida's a big advocate for this concept, and we're going to unpack why conscious women rise when they retreat. And this is just as well because we love collaborating with you, Vida, and we've been collaborating now for over many years on our conscious conversations, our courageous conversations, the cheese and chats. You've been helping us guide our understanding of what conscious leadership is all about. And you've been very busy co-designing with us the delivery of the Business Women Australia's Leaders Retreats. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity of yet meeting Vida, she is the founder of My Vida. She's established a beautiful, beautiful holistic and conscious space in Inglewood in Western Australia. If you get the chance, if you're not from the state, go and visit that space. It's extraordinary. She's the author of My Power Statement. And Vida's one of the transformational leadership coaches, probably the first one I ever met, way before it was trendy to be a transformational coach. And she's a speaker, but more as a space holder. She's one of probably our most popular facilitator in Business Women Australia because of this unique way that she's been guiding and helping us hold space and understand how to hold space for ourselves and for each other. And she'll even do this through long table lunches, through boardroom, roundtable discussions, bringing this consciousness into our everyday lives at work and in our community organisations. So she is renowned for catalysing profound shifts in the way that we lead and that we live and that we connect. So welcome to the show. Well, welcome back to the show, Vida.
Thank you, Lyn. It's such a privilege to be here. I love being part of Business Women Australia, and thank you for the lovely introduction. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Well, me too. And look, I love collaborating with you. I always learn so much along this journey, and I know that you've helped me become a better person. I know my husband's very grateful for that too, as is my family. And look, let's get into this. Look, you've had over 3 decades of experience in your own business ownership and working in the space of human behaviour and leadership development. And you've been working in this unique intersection of this conscious leadership, emotional intelligence and well-being, helping us align inner and outer worlds so that we can lead with authenticity. And these are words that are thrown around a lot. Yet when we actually experience this guided by you, sort of the penny starts to drop about what this means. But share with me and our listeners what happens when leaders are constantly busy, overloaded, and literally holding it all together. I mean, this is coming up a lot in our conversations all around the nations. Women are feeling overwhelmed. They're busy. They're feeling very overloaded.
This is, it is a phenomenon now. It's like busyness is worn like a badge instead of saying, there's something wrong here. You know, our boundaries are out of whack. We're lost connection with what's most important to us when we're that busy. But, you know, we've probably all experienced the feelings of being that busy. And what happens to us? Our energy drops. Our ability to focus our attention drops. Our sleep gets interrupted. Our health, our relationships, our decision making all become challenged. It's a very unresourceful space to be in. And when we think about being conscious leaders, what is consciousness but wholeness? It's about embracing and willing to welcoming our whole self, bringing our whole self to the table. And that means the parts of ourselves that we like, the parts that we like to show to the world, that we celebrate, that we're proud of. But it also means welcoming the parts of ourselves that we hide, that we suppress, that we deny, that we pretend do not exist, and that may even go beyond our conscious awareness. We may not even be aware that we have these qualities unless we have space and time to turn inwards and notice what already exists. You think about, like in a leadership situation, a busy, overwhelmed, overextended person, they may think that they're a good communicator. But their peers, their team may think that they're overbearing, poor listener, micromanaging, dominant, and they're not aware of that situation. So I can't do anything to change it. So when we go on retreat, especially this conscious leadership retreat, when we go on retreat, we step outside of what exists. We step outside of our normal way of being, of our routines, our habits, our behaviors. And that gap between what exists and being separated from it gives us the opportunity to look in and see how we really are performing, how we are really showing up in life. And that's one of the beauties of retreat. We get to slow down enough to see and recognize what's happening so we can make conscious choices of how we want to show up instead of showing up just on a habitual way of being. So overthinking is destructive.
So this stepping away from the demands of life and that demands of all the things that, you know, leading and managing and being in the juggle, that provides a space for renewal, for clarity, for that conscious growth. But it sounds a bit like escaping, Vida. It's not cocktails by the pool or marshmallows in the fire pit with mulled wine all day, is it? I mean, there's an evidence-informed design and experiential development and deep intention that I've seen you actually really carefully curate for retreat. And I hear you refer to it as being about reclaiming. So how does stepping away create greater awareness and real change? What do you mean by that reclaiming?
I just want to go first before I answer that back to the bit escape. Isn't that funny that when we all know it's important to eat healthy and we all know it's important to exercise, but I don't think our mental health and our ability to be mindful is valued the same. Taking time for ourselves to turn inward and recalibrate is not an escape. It's a tool of efficiency and meaning and fulfillment and wholeness. So I just want to say that bit first. So where were we?
Yeah, I'm really interested in this idea that you have of reclaiming and how stepping away creates that greater awareness and real change. Like
Yeah.
how does that happen?
because we need to step away to expand our awareness. When we're in routine, when we're in habit, where we're unconsciously moving through life, unpresent. You know, they say 49%, research says 49% of the time our mind wanders. So we're moving from one task to the next task with the residue of uncompleted tasks. We always have this weight of doing and moving, and we're not actually present. So when we have time to step back, be still, become present, be able to notice, we expand our awareness. And what is awareness but mindfulness? Mindfulness is awareness. It's the awareness that arises when we intentionally pay attention to the present moment without judgment, with a mind of compassion, an attitude of compassion and kindness. We're totally here in the moment, becoming aware. Like 95, a research done by Tara Ewich, which is one of my favorite, says that 95% of people think they're aware. They're aware of what's going on internally. They're aware of their biases. They're aware of their wounds, their unconscious patterns, the way they treat people. They are aware of how other people perceive them. They're also aware of their external environment, what's going on around them and between them. But the reality is only 10 to 15% of people have this awareness. So you just think about your work environment. How many people in your team actually have awareness, if we're considering that only 10 to 15% of people have awareness and self-awareness? So being in a conscious space, consciousness is a practice, right? Just like mindfulness, it's a practice. It's not something that we go to a workshop, a seminar, or a retreat and it's done. It's finished. I'm mindful. We have to keep living mindfully. We have to keep living consciously. I like to think of it like this. This is a beautiful analogy. So I've got a piece of white muslin, right? I put it in red dye and it comes out and it's really red. Then I put it on the line to dry and I come back and it's pink, not red. But then I put it in the dye again, and next time it's on the line, it's more red until it totally becomes red. This is something that's going on retreat. You take away magic with you, but then the distractions of life can get in the way of that magic. And you wait a little bit, then you go back until you're actually living it. It's not, many of us know what we need to do, what works for us, what's important, but putting that into a lived experience is totally different. Walking our talk, being authentic, real and conscious means practice.
And this stepping away on retreat, moving away from the business, gives that opportunity to practice. That's what I found in Ubud too, that we had these sort of opportunities in our courageous conversations and our conscious leader discussions, and to practice some of this and learn some of the conscious practices. And then, of course, the deeper work that you do in circle is extraordinary, and a much deeper sense of that stepping away. But for the Ubud retreat that we did last year was really profound for me, to be able to have that time away, but within the guided practice of others as well, rather than on my own, because I'm still learning. I mean, the board asked me what my definition of conscious leadership is. Honestly, the board, if any of you are listening to this, just cancel what I said last week, because for me, it was this whole concept of something very deeply spiritual. For me, my purpose is to bring love into the world. So for me, being conscious and being a conscious leader is allowing that deeper sense of love of myself and love of others to come through my work.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm realizing that there is this practice of conscious leadership, which is really what we're embracing as an ecosystem of conscious leaders, which is going to be unique for everybody. So my definition is personal to me, but that's not necessarily the universal definition that sits underneath conscious leadership. Is it, Vida? I mean, help me
Conscious
here.
leadership is all about wholeness. It's showing up as your whole self. And when we are ourselves, when we're authentic, when we walk out, when we're in alignment, when our mental, emotional, physical, intuitive, even spiritual intelligences are all in alignment, all going in the same direction, no conflict between them, we have greater energy. We have more energy. And that energy allows us to be more creative, more present, more alive. I've heard like conscious leadership is all about your aliveness. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Because when we are authentic, when we're truly connected to the source of our being, we are more alive. We're more connected. But it is a practice. It's not something that, and I think this is a really important thing. It is a practice. And we can't, when we're on retreat, I think the magic of retreat, the hidden, most magical moment of going on retreat is being witnessed and witnessing others. So when we come together with a common intent in a more sacred, purposeful, deliberate space of consciousness, one person sharing opens our eyes to ourselves. We see ourselves through their story. Their courage reminds us of our courage. Their vulnerability reminds us of ours. Their story can open aspects in ourselves that we didn't even realize we had. And we can't do that on our own. So being part of the collective in that conscious space expands our awareness way before what we can do on our own.
Absolutely.
But it also gives us this very strong sense of belonging and validation, that we belong here. Like the relationships that I have built with women in this sort of space, and not even knowing with some of them what they do for a living, is such a deep relationship. I can talk to them and share with them on a level that I may not be able to do with even some of my close friends.
Yeah, look, I've had so many people reach out and say, they'd love to come to our retreats and speak and, share their workshops and, be a part of the program. And it's really hard to explain how our retreats are so different to as a summit or a conference or a convention that is what we often expect from a business retreat. When I was in Ubud at the last retreat, it just struck me that I really don't make a lot of time in my diary for this stillness, this reflection, this self work, to be honest, and I came away from that retreat really thinking that I needed a much building out more time in my day for this deeper attention to what's happening in my mind and my body and deeper within me. So I'm really interested to hear, your thoughts about the importance of attention in leadership and, this lack of attention that is quite common because of the busyness and the packed diaries.
Energy flows where attention goes. So wherever we put our attention, it grows stronger. So with a packed diary, our attention is getting scattered from one thing to another. So if our attention is on, for example, the busyness or what's not working or the challenge or the person sitting to the desk next to me who's a pain, if my attention is on that, then I'm creating more of that. If my intention is on my consciousness, the way I want to show up in the world, the results I want to achieve, the person I want to become, the person I am at the moment, then I'm creating more of that. You think about it like, when we buy a new car, we bought a new pair of shoes or something, right? We send a message to our brain saying this is important. And our RAS, so reticular activation center in our brain, which is like a gatekeeper because we have too much information coming in. So this gatekeeper only lets in what's important. And how it knows what's important is by where you place your attention. So your purchase of the car or the new shoes sent a message to your brain saying, this is important. And then your brain bounces around finding evidence to support that importance. That's why the next day you see more of that car on the road or you see other people wearing those shoes because the brain's looking for things related to that importance. So wherever you put your attention, it's getting stronger because your brain is helping you support that attention because it's important. So we need to be very mindful of where we place our attention because that's where our energy goes. So when we are in a space where we're practicing more consciousness, and as I said, it is a practice, and I want to stress that because in this quick fix society, it's like I've done that. Do you know how many times I get people say to me, yeah, I tried meditation, it didn't work. I just get baffled. It's like, well, that just means you've got to practice more. It doesn't mean you give up. You didn't give up driving your car because the first time you got in your car, it didn't work. And it just doesn't make sense to me. It just shows there's an underlying lack of value for being more conscious. And that's what I want to bring and share. And being conscious is a practice. We all do it differently. But it is understanding, and there's some fundamental things we need to understand. We need to understand awareness. We need to understand how we consciously communicate, because having greater awareness and consciousness is in every practice we do throughout the day. And conscious communication, when you think about it, it's so powerful. Like there's 5 ways to conscious communication. There's one, it's about holding space, creating a container where everybody feels safe and supported and able to be themselves within that container. It's about radical listening to the whole person, what is said, what is not said, the gaps between the words. Because when we listen to other people, when we truly listen, we are saying, you matter. What you have to say is important, and I'm willing to receive whatever you have to offer. We also talk about speaking in the I, responsible, intentional language, speaking about our own experiences, taking responsibility for them, which gives us freedom and empowers us to make changes. We talk about discernment, knowing when to and when not to. What is this moment asking of me? And most of all, we talk about responsibility, because we are the creators of our own reality. Nobody else is. And when we practice that, we are building our skills of being more consciously aware. We're building our skills of being more patient and being more present. So, it's just, we've got to practice. Even if it's just a minute here and a minute there.
As leaders, as managers, as people with the responsibilities of our teams, of our businesses, of our departments, of our organisations, of our boards, when you talk about the skills that we develop through this conscious work, listening and actually allowing others to understand and be heard and showing that they matter, really does flip the lid on the style of management and leadership that we know doesn't work. The command control, which is you listen to me, you do what I say, tell me what resources you need, and then just go off and do it. We know that's not working. And these skills of being conscious and leading in a way that is practicing conscious communication is so powerful. It really is extraordinary. So, I started practicing these sort of little bits of changing in the way that I behave and the way that I was doing things based on this work that you've been doing with us over the years, Vida. And the change in the teams and even in my consulting clients was extraordinary. When you talk about taking responsibility for what I'm doing and how I'm coming shifts the way that I come to a scenario or a situation as well, because I'm not coming with this view that I'm right and you're wrong. I'm coming with curiosity around, what might be happening for someone else first, rather than thinking, what am I asking others? I'm asking of every situation, what am I asking of myself as a leader? And to be able to hold space for others It's for them to come forward, for them to show their honesty. And if I talk in my own I language, I'm giving permission for others to talk in I language. They're seeing my vulnerability. Like if I say, look, guys, I'm a little frightened at the moment about how things are going with this, or coming a little bit, we're getting off budget. I'm sharing a little bit of the things I'm worrying about and how I might be bringing things to the table that could be bringing things off peace, and sharing my own thoughts rather than coming in to try and fix and solve. That's really shifting the way that our team meetings are happening. So it's very practical. These things, these experiences I didn't really get all those years ago when we started doing this work. I thought it was all about me kind of getting higher in Maslow's hierarchy of self-actualization. I actually had no idea it was going to make me a better parent, more interested in where my children are, being open to their feedback, being open to their advice about how things are landing for them. I can still say to them that I'm hearing you, and what's coming up for me is this. So it's not necessarily meaning that I've got to people please them or do what they say, but it's opening what it is to be honest inside our relationship. And it's profound.
Yeah, it is profound and it's beautiful. And the thing is, what we learn as leaders and how we behave leaders is not different to how we are everywhere. We're the same person. Whether we're with our children, listening is a beautiful quality. Whether we're in a meeting, listening gives people permission, gives them permission to be themselves. And, we notice their position, their status, their role, their importance. But we remember how we feel in their company, whether we felt seen, heard, validated, cared for, important, whatever it is, we remember how we feel with them. So when we're present, people get a chance to feel with us, to be with us. And as a leader, you're always an example of what is possible. You're setting the stage for what is possible for everybody else that you're engaging with. And it doesn't turn on and off when you go to work or when you come home. It's a constant thing. And the one thing I love about our leadership retreat is we're not just talking about what we do as leaders. Sure, we're building skills in what you do as a leader, but we're talking about who you are as you do what you do as a leader. We're developing that skill as well as you being the person you want to be as you do what you do as a leader. And that's very important.
So when we think about this opportunity to retreat, to take that time out, to retreat in order to rise, what do you think is the most important ingredient in retreat?
Well, I do think, which I mentioned, is witnessing is very important. But I think what the next, really probably the most important thing is the separation from your everyday life. Being somewhere, like we all, or most of us are aware that real change comes through the discomfort from stepping outside the comfort zone, from moving into the unknown. So when you go on retreat, you're in a foreign environment. You're often around women or men or whatever the retreat is that you don't know. You're stepping into a program that you're not totally aware of. You might have a flow of what's happening for the weekend, but you're not aware of what's going on. You're vulnerable. You're out of your comfort zone. Perfect for something different to arise. Perfect for you to look at life differently, for you to be not your normal self. To you to be exposed to new possibilities, new ways of thinking, new perspectives, new discoveries and explorations. And that is not easy to do in every day when you've got these deadlines, you've got to pick up the kids from school, aging parents, whatever it is. It's not easy to give yourself that immersion into possibility in your everyday life.
I'm really looking forward to it. The more you're talking about it, the more I'm thinking, I'm so ready for July. Like South
Yes,
Australia,
Mum.
it's going to be amazing. Look, we still have a couple of rooms. If anyone's listening to this and you're keen to join us, we do have some space for the July retreat. And we do, of course, have plenty of space for the retreat that's later in the year. So Mount Lofty Estates, 20th to the 23rd of July, and we're in Blue Karma Resort in Ubud in Bali from the 21st to the 25th. It's an extra day. So that's an even deeper dive into this work for October. So Vida, I'm sort of channeling, sort of the experience that I had last year in Ubud, and having that time, and then coming back to our community, and then being able to have the opportunity to really to dive into our courageous conversations and to keep the work going. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of July, because I've been lucky to be able to do a lot of that work through our program in WA, and obviously you have your circle work at the Inspiration Space. It's lucky for us, but we might have to do something online, I think, after the July retreats, because a lot of our women are looking for something like this, but obviously haven't got access to you unless you've got a community of conscious practice leaders around the nation who we could, build into the network. But that's perhaps something we could talk about offline. But
Yeah, and it's something very doable. I can think of many things we can do right now that would work online. But, I think the most important thing is having connection with women who are going through the same experience. Not necessarily the same retreat, but similar experiences, women that are really ready because to get from here to there, it's like we have to go on a journey, and part of that journey is letting go, immersing ourselves, descending, letting go, going through that difficult, maybe a little bit icky stage, so that we can come out clear without all our preconceived perceptions holding us in a particular form or a particular way. And once we come out the other side, it is practice that helps us stay there, keeps the Muslim red instead of pink. So having each other, having been witnessed in that space, and then having each other, we're still being witnessed and still learning and engaging with each other and still fulfilling ourselves through experiencing each other. That's really important. That's great, Lyn.
And how do you see these experiences and this way of being and this journey actually aligning with an understanding of emotional intelligence growth?
Being more aware of our emotions, being able to respond instead of react, is emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, looks like most change, it comes from awareness. And our whole program is about building awareness, expanding our awareness just by everything that happens. It's not like that we have to sit down and do a workshop on expanding awareness. But the way we have programmed the whole weekend, the way we engage from the moment we meet you, is about expanding awareness.
Yeah,
We're
that's
doing it
such
through
a point.
example and through experience. And emotional intelligence comes from awareness.
Like, I think about the sort of the joy and the feeling of incredible deep connection that I get from sitting in circle with women and from these experiences. And I sort of really have used this lovely time to really connect with my deepest values, my deepest purpose, unlocking a wisdom in me that I think that I hadn't really fully understood, in terms of what my own personal power is. So much of my life is around, meeting the performance agreements of others, and being successful in meeting agreed outcomes, ticking off those boxes. That's been the thing that has been the success criteria of my career. And what the opportunity of having these experiences has been for me, has been able to dig deep into what it is that really does bring me joy. What are those greatest fears that are in me? What are all my bits, my light side, my dark side, that make up the whole part of me? And I think, when I think about why I talked about that spiritual piece, when the board asked me about my definition of conscious leadership, I think because, when you say holistic, I actually feel, when we look at the wheel of life, so much of the focus of my life has been on all the other quadrants of my life, my health, my wealth, my family, my relationship, my key relationships, all the experiences that I want. For me, I think I had one segment that was always about fun, because fun was one of my highest values. And this spiritual piece is the one that keeps coming and bubbling back up now through this work that we've been doing about what is that purpose, what's that deeper meaning, and particularly as I'm getting older. And I think I started on this journey when I was younger, these deep revelations and realizations about who I am in the world and what my purpose really is, that aligns with my deepest sense of self. I often think, I wish I'd sort of started this journey, but I guess, we are where we're at, and now is as good a time as any for everyone to come and join us on this kind of experience. So, Vida, we've got so many women that come back to retreat. We've got a few that have booked into both this year even. Why do leaders return to retreats?
I just want to comment on one thing you said about ticking the boxes. That is really important. It's not like we have consciousness without the strategic striving. We have both in harmony with each other. It's just that we're conscious of who we are and why we're doing it. We're connected to our purpose. And many out there are looking for their purpose. I hear this a fair bit. And I just want to say, your purpose is not lost. It's not something you can go and find. Have you ever tried looking for something when you don't know what you're looking for? It's really hard to find. In fact, it's impossible. So you can't go looking for your purpose unless you know what it is. So practice being a better version of yourself. Practice of just being your most authentic version of yourself, and your purpose will arise. But it's not something you can go and find because you don't know what you're looking for. So I just want to say that.
I love that. I'm so, when you think about my head, and so much of my learning has come out of the university system, and it's like, it's really hard to let go and unlearn and just be. The head gets in the way. My head is always trying to analyze, trying to, put it into a framework. And I've noticed with you, and the way, I love sitting with you when you're designing these experiences, because, you're drawing on so much evidence-informed work, but also this lifetime of working with people through all the different sort of things that you've done that have been rites of passage right through to women's work, and, all this rebirthing stuff that's really kind of primal, really red tent kind of stuff, coming back to the basics of us as women sitting, as we would have originally before the Industrial Revolution, in our villages and around our campfires, and being together and just being. And the wisdom, the deep, sophisticated wisdom of the consciousness of that connection to each other and to our country and to our planet. And, this is very aligned to the work that we're doing now, aligning with the inner development goals, and it's lovely having our advisory board connecting all this work that we've been doing over a decade with you and the conscious leadership movement, aligning that with the IDGs that have come from the UN sustainability goals around that deep sense of working on self and understanding self. It's just like, I feel like Business Women Australia is really leading the way in adopting the practices that the modern world is screaming out for, that are actually built in the ancient wisdom that really is, has always been there, but has been negated through, the capitalist and industrial movement, which, I'm, very proudly a part of, having a commerce degree and done very well, thank you very much, but it isn't working.
No, well, it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. And they're not mutually exclusive. Tapping into the archetypal nature of the feminine archetype, being primal in our lineage of those that have gone before us in our maternal line, is not separate from our strategic ambitions. They can live in harmony with each other. In fact, they support each other. They make us better leaders. So, I think this is one of the things that have happened in our, as you said, from the Industrial Revolution and in our patriarchal society, is splitting ourselves in two, dividing ourselves, diminishing our capacity instead of bringing our whole selves to the table. Sure, in different environments we may show different attributes, but we're still bringing our whole self. We're not suppressing one part when we're being authentic and conscious. And we're not splitting ourselves in two anymore. That's why people go to retreat. That's why people keep coming back, because they get to feel whole and complete again. They bring the two parts of themselves, or the many parts of themselves, together and can own who they are completely. They can experience their more tribal yearnings and the deep connection of women together. And they can share their strategic ambitions and their successes and glories and failures and difficulties, and everything is welcome without any judgment.
So there's a lot of experiential practice in retreat. You're and I noticed in Bali too, depending on how the group is working together and on themselves, you'll even kind of pivot some of the practice and experiences that you bring in depending on what the needs are at the time. And this is really a testament to your extraordinary work. I've never seen anyone else do anything like that. I mean, you must admit my conferences and summits are pretty boring in comparison generally to what I go to compared to what you do. But what I'm interested in is that you've kept it to a certain size, and you've got, it's all experiential. A lot of it's experiential. There's also space for quiet and journaling and time on our own. And I sort of think that sort of these decades of your experience of in corporate and management roles and running your own business too, as well as all this work that you've done, sort of that as you say, it's been often separated, but you've been able to combine all this into a way of being as a professional woman as well. So what I'm getting to here is I'm wanting our listeners to understand it's really hard to explain how this experience works, because I don't imagine that many people would have had much experience with this type of leadership development work. You talk about this sort of idea of stepping away to rise up, and I couldn't help myself. I did some research before, when we were getting this podcast ready, and I came across some work around that importance of psychological detachment. But it's not sort of, it's different than the psychological detachment practices that these research papers were talking about. But it kind of like is that sort of comes from recovery and well-being, for when people aren't well. But people are very well who come along to these experiences. They're successful women. They're already, leading teams. They're running their own businesses. Some of them are corporate executives, women on boards. You've got this incredible eclectic mix of women from different cultural backgrounds as well.
Yeah, they're very capable women. They're very capable. And from the outside, everything looks amazing. But on the inside, they still have the same yearnings, as we all do. They have the same yearnings. And it's finding a place for these yearnings to belong, to be able to be seen and flourish, so that, again, we can bring the whole self to the table. And it is very experiential. Like, we often go to, well, I have done this many times, and I've heard other people speak about a similar experience where we go to these workshops or speaker or events or seminar stuff, and we get so inspired. We're like, yeah, I've got this. I've just changed my life. This is fantastic. Then you get home and you put all the material in a drawer and never to be seen again. And you go back to normal. And that's because we get off on the inspiration of somebody else, not our own inspiration. And when I say inspiration, I mean being in our spirit, taking action from our own spirit. We got off on their spirit, not off on our own spirit. So how do we get off on our own spirit? It's experiential. We have to experience it. We have to embody it. It's one thing to learn it in here, and that is great. We need to do that as well. But if we don't embody it, it's just theory. And theory doesn't really change the world. Acting on that theory changes the world.
It's incredible how much of that experience you can get over, a 3-day retreat. That isn't a long time when you think about the profound shift. When I think about my shift, and goodness gracious, we've got an extra day in the Ubud one later in the year. In October, we've got an extra day, and I'm just thinking, wow, that's just going to be, it's so much can happen in a day, right? So
Absolutely.
look, I'm excited. I'm really excited.
I'm just going to answer that because it's like you say it's not a lot of time, 3 days, but it's a massive amount of time. Because you think about your month, each month, how much time do you spend on mindfulness, on being present, on really investigating stuff, from unhooking from your automatic behaviors? How much time do you spend? Most people don't spend much time. So 3 days in immersion is huge. It's absolutely huge. It's years of what you normally would spend doing this type of stuff.
Yes, yep, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I'm hanging out. Look, if any of our listeners are listening to this and this conversation is sparking something in you to take this time out to really invest in yourself, really, I'm very keen to talk to you or reach out to Vida. Look, whether or not you're coming to a Business Women Australia leadership retreat or another immersion that's aligned to this kind of work, this is a really important time for women to take that time to rest, to pause, to reconnect with that authentic presence, that awareness, that deepening the awareness of yourself and others. And you can hear from the way that we've been talking, it is quite different, and it is extraordinary. And we're so proud to be collaborating with Vida and embarking on these experiences and being able to offer these experiences to women from all walks of life who, if you're being called, this is for you, that means you're ready. Vida, is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I think it is that this is like a conscious intervention, and we need a full immersion to allow this intervention to take place and integrate into our everyday life. And it's a lot of fun as well. It's a lot of fun.
It certainly is. And watch this space. We've got some amazing Australian ethical brands and Indigenous brands who have gifted some gorgeous things for our retreat attendees, and we'll be doing shout outs over the course of the next 6 months, just highlighting the great work that's being done in Australia with beautiful products and gorgeous things that we will be loving on retreat. We are really going to be spoiling our attendees. For those of you who can't make it to these retreats, you can get a little taste of this kind of work through our Conscious Leader discussions, our roundtable discussions. At any of our states, we bring a lot of the conscious communication parameters and practice those, even if we're talking about, capital and wealth and leadership and management and psychological safety or human resources practice. We had a wonderful session this week with Alicia Coetzee in Perth, talking about, managing teams, and a lot of that is embedded in all the important aspects of being conscious and aware as a conscious leader, being curious and seeking to understand before being understood. A lot of this type of work is really shifting the way that managers and leaders and team members are with each other. So it's a really relevant work, no matter where you are in your journey. Feel free to contact me, Lyn at businesswomenaustralia.com.au, if you're interested in anything that we're doing with Business Women Australia, or if you're interested in coming along to our retreats. We have some special end of year offers, so this is a great time to book in. And I'd just like to thank you, Vida, for everything you bring to our community nationally and locally, and to my world personally as well.
Oh, thank you. The same. I feel exactly the same, and I just love being part of Business Women Australia. It's the one place I feel like I'm home. I feel like I belong, and the culture that you have created and the team have created is I've never experienced it anywhere else in a business network. So it's really something, and it's totally sustainable, and that's what this new way of being is. It's sustainable. It honours the work, the outcome, but it honors the person and the relationships between the persons.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Vida, for being on the show, and thank you to our listeners. For those who have commented, we've shared some of the comments. We haven't been able to share them all. It's been great to have you listening to us. And if you've been thinking, now is your time to join Business Women Australia, become a part of this movement, become a part of this ecosystem of leaders, developing our consciousness, improving our awareness, doing the deep work. That's what we're all about. We would love for you to become a part of our community, wherever you might be. We meet online twice a month. At least, and we meet in person across the different capital cities. And if you want to set up a group and want that support to meet where you might be in an area that hasn't got a community, then reach out. We'll help you set up your own community as well and support you in that. So thanks so much, Vida. It's great to have you on the show. We will have you back. There's so much in there that we could just unpack, just even the idea of presence. That's a whole topic on its own. So thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have been listening to the Business Women Australia podcast show. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights to empower you on your journey. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to stay updated in our latest episodes. And if you're not already a member of Business Women Australia, what are you waiting for? Head to our website today and join so that you can connect with a thriving community of inspiring women across Australia. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.